Senate screens foreign affairs, water resources and other ministries in budget defense, calls for focus on post-COVID-19 sensitive projects.
Presidential task force warns arriving travelers against evading COVID-19 tests in Nigeria.
Now, in addition to the community transmission that is going on, is the one that is going to be reimported.
Chief Justice of Nigeria advises new judges to shun corruption.
It is important to note that all forms of gratification must not be associated with you.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the U.S. presidential election 2020.
And counting is ongoing, excuse me, in the 59th U.S. presidential election, recording its largest voter turnout in over a century. Now, before Election Day, Tuesday, over 100 million Americans had already cast their ballots, either by in-person early voting or by mail. Kingsley.
Very true, Claire. Now the situation is still fluid as the votes, as you indicated, are still coming in, but the current results indicate that Trump already has 165 electoral votes, while Biden is said to have secured some 215 electoral college votes. Americans are waiting for the final outcome from Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin as decisive states for this race. And experts indicate that Democrats need to flip Arizona and another Republican state to get comfortable. It appears that Biden is ahead, indicating the outcome of Arizona just might be blue this time, which is Democratic.
Indeed, talking about Arizona, just a few minutes ago, Kingsley, Fox News, which of course is traditionally is conservative media, station,
yes.
Had I think sent out what would you call
the projections?
Exactly,
yes.
In favor of Biden, and I think the White House didn't like that. So.
All right, there's no question about it. I mean, the situation is very fluid. There are no certainties just yet.
So let's say we are doing our own permutations from here, and in the case of if Joe Biden does win as he leads presently, it would be good to say that Kamala Harris could very well become the first female vice president of the United States. That is, of course, if the Democratic candidate Joe Biden wins the race.
But if Donald Trump is re-elected, he will be the oldest president to be inaugurated in U.S. history, as he will be 74 at the time of the 2021 inauguration. This is also the first presidential election in which both major candidates are over 70 years old.
All right, let's just throw up some of the pre-election or campaign, trajectories between the two parties. President Donald Trump, of course, and his Democratic contender Joe Biden. Both of them dominated the headlines, social media feeds, of course, in the months, leading up to the election. They were the only names, or should I say they were not the only names on the presidential ballot, regardless in the states, of course, yesterday. There were over 30 other third-party independent candidates, Kingsley, running, for the president, contesting the seat of the president. But at least one state this year.
Well, that's the misconception that is very popular, usually outside of the United States, for those who do not understand the electoral system in the U.S. They say that, there are two political parties in the U.S. There are two major political parties in the U.S. and most of the others, and there are hundreds of them, particularly in and around the states. They are usually referred to as third parties. So that's why you say the two major parties, the Democratic and the Republican Party, and third parties. Plus, of course, independent candidates who also seek to contest for the election. Amongst the independent candidates for this year's election are the rapper Kanye West. And you also have a former child actor, now turned cryptocurrency billionaire Brock Pierce and former coal executive Don Blankenship. Now, many of the independent candidates, as I said, are rarely mentioned as they are seen as outsiders, unlikely to secure the 270 electoral votes needed at the Electoral College to become president.
So it's not peculiar here. It's not peculiar to assume two major political parties, two visible parties are the major contending parties. It's everywhere.
Well, not everywhere. I mean, for the U.S., it's specific. In the U.K., for instance, you can't say there are two major political parties. I mean, you have Labour Party, you have Conservative, you have the Liberal Democratic Party,
indeed.
And so that makes
active,
a minimum of three.
Active parties,
yes,
indeed.
That's right.
All right. Now, in addition to voting for president, voters across America's 50 states also will voted in various federal, state, and local elections, including, of course, the two houses that make up the U.S. Congress for the candidates into the 435-seat House of Representatives and 35 of the 100 seats of the Senate.
Now, worthy of note is that there are 9 Nigerian Americans who are candidates that contested the elections for which voting took place yesterday. Now, those candidates are seeking to get into the federal, state, and local positions. One of them, of course, is Esther Abuja, who is hoping to represent a district in the Minnesota House of Representatives on the platform of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. That's DFLP. Of course, that's an affiliate of the U.S. Democratic Party. She's 35 years old, and she defeated longtime State Representative Raymond Den in the party's primary just about 2 months ago.
She's just one of the 4 out of the 9 5 mil, should I say, Nigerian American, Americans, of course, taking part in this.
What numbers are you reading? 4 of the 5 or 9?
No. We have 4 ladies and 5 men.
Yeah, that's
contestants.
right.
So there are 9 altogether. We have 9 Nigerian Americans, or American Africans, American Nigerians, whichever way you want to call it, contested in the U.S. election. So as we all look towards the U.S. with keen interest, very keen interest, how much will the large voter turnout have on both President Trump and Joe Biden's chances? And most importantly, how will the outcome of the U.S. election affect not just Africa, not just Nigeria, but of course international politics, international relations, I should say? Well, we'll be probing deeper into the issues and of course others that may come up in the course of our program this morning. Kingsley, and of course the swing states, the battleground, the electoral college, whatever you call it, electoral college, all today we'll be looking at them, and of course we'll try and make sense out of what you don't understand and I also don't understand. I am Claire Delapo Abdurrazak. Thank you for joining us once again. It's Wednesday's edition.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Claire to also welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As usual, we'll have supplementary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. For now, let's join Chimaobi Water-Nanje for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Chimaobi. What's interesting this morning?
Hello, good morning, Kingsley and Claire. A lot actually is, happening this morning on the news. And we'll start this morning with the VP as the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, has been speaking on the development and sustenance of viable enterprises, which he notes is no longer dependent on the size of the corporation and related factors, but sound ethical practices imbibed by all stakeholders. Now, this was at the virtual 2020 conference of the Institute of Directors held yesterday, where the Vice President also explains that the frequent clashes between conscience and wrongful behavior will eventually create a toxic work environment and destroy corporate objectives and visions. While emphasizing the grave danger of unethical practices, Vice President Osinbajo says local and international investors have greater access to information and more options than ever before, and that the slightest whiff of scandal or malfeasance can destroy value built up over the years. The Vice President stated that the local and especially the international examples of the collapse of companies thought to be too big to fail and brand names that had even once been associated with integrity and strong business ethics is a strong reminder of how brittle edifices built on weak business ethics are. And in the meantime, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, has visited damaged structures by hoodlums in Anambra State who cashed on the NSAS protest to wreak havoc. The visit, which was at the instance of President Muhammadu Buhari, is to ascertain the level of destruction in the state and report back to the presidency.
We as government will do all in our power to assure them. The Empower program, we're going to fast forward it now. Luckily, our 2021 budget for NDE, we have so much to teach our young ones in terms of vocation so that they can have skills.
And the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says no government in the history of Nigeria has ever put in place genuine and realistic measures towards alleviating poverty and creating jobs for youths like the Buhari administration. The minister stated this in Kaduna while briefing the northern governors and other critical stakeholders on the efforts made by the administration in impacting on Nigerians through a number of programs.
The committee understands through our various interactions that the burden on the ministry to execute its mandate, it's onerous and needs a lot of resources.
And now to the National Assembly, where the Senate has continued with the scrutiny of the 2021 budget, with various standing committees harping on the need for ministries, departments and agencies of government to focus on post-COVID-19 sensitive projects. The Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Water Resources and Interior appeared before respective Senate committees.
We've been trying for a long time, for the last 5 years, to see how we can, computerize and have a 21st century ICT architecture.
Most likely, from here, we initiate and put in some money into the budget for you to be able to start.
Now, travelers who are evading COVID-19 PCR tests after arriving in the country will have their passports placed on suspension for a minimum period of 6 months henceforth. Chairman, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, says the sanction is necessary to reduce the risk of COVID-19 importation.
The major concern now, in addition to the community transmission that is going on, is the one that is going to be re-imported. Those that have not carried out the second in-country test will be given an opportunity to explain why they have not.
The Division of Port Health Services has been directed to work with NCDC and relevant agencies to ensure reduction in the risk of importing infectious disease.
And the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, has called on the set of new judges of high courts in Nigeria sworn in recently to resist the temptation of corruption in whatever form in discharge of their judicial functions. He made the call at an induction training for the judges at the National Judicial Institute in Abuja.
It is important to note that all forms of gratification must not be associated with you. You must not be found wanting.
This course will aid you in the proper application of the Code of Conduct for Judicial Officers in the discharge of your duties.
All right, latest figures coming in from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) reveals 137 new cases of coronavirus have been confirmed in 15 states, and the FCT bringing the total number of cases to 63,173 in the country. Of these 137 new cases, Lagos has 60, Abia 21, the FCT has 18, Rivers 13, Kaduna 5, Oyo 4, Edo 3, Delta, Imo, Kano and Ogun confirmed 2 new cases each, while Bauchi, Gombe, Nasarawa, Niger and Osun have 1 new case each. On total number of cases per state chart, Lagos is still leading with 21,398 cases. The FCT is second with 6,142 cases, while Plateau comes third with 3,652 cases. 2,376 cases are currently active with 59,634 patients discharged upon recovery and an unfortunate 1,151 deaths on record. All right, and those are the highlights this morning on the news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire on U.S. presidential election 2020.
The recent genuine concerns and agitations by Nigerians about the excessive use of force and, in some cases, extrajudicial killings and wrongful conduct by men of the Nigerian police force. The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. We will also ensure that all those responsible for misconduct or wrongful acts are brought to justice. We also deeply regret the loss of life of the young man in Oyo State during the recent demonstrations. I have directed that the circumstances of his death should be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, it is important to recognize that the vast majority of men and women of the police force are hardworking and diligent in performing their duties. The few bad eggs should not be allowed to tarnish the image and reputation of the force.
Mr. President said the youth of this country have spoken, and he has heard, and he has since gone to work for the youth of our country, not just as a president, but even as a father of the younger generation.
The real Nigerian youth is a patriot, not a tool of destabilization.
Mr. President made an appeal to the Nigerian youth that this protest, wherever held, should be done in a peaceful manner. The Nigerian youth should be on their guard to make sure that elements that will infiltrate and distract them from the very purpose of their protest should be prevented from doing so.
Listen to the voice of reason.
Yes, but how?
Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam, the regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes.
To disinfect your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for germs and stains remover. Harpic sticker formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergent and bleach.
Wow! Now I'm convinced, Helen Paul.
Really?
Yeah!
Now that she's part of the mission, the next house is yours.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And on business news, revenue from the value-added tax is rising significantly in 2020. And this is in spite of the impact of the nationwide lockdown arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. Ronami Agerani, our correspondent, has more.
The latest report from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that Nigeria generated 424.7 billion naira from value-added tax in the third quarter of this year. That's a 30% rise from 324.2 billion that was generated in the previous quarter, and a 54% increase when compared to the 275.12 billion naira generated in the second quarter of 2019. The MBS report further indicates that the manufacturing sector generated the highest amount with 47.07 billion naira, while the mining sector generated the least with 64.5 million naira. Of the total VAT generated in the third quarter, 214.7 billion naira was generated as local non-import VAT, 115.34 billion naira as foreign non-import VAT, and 94.7 billion naira as Nigerian Customs Service import VAT. And on the stock market yesterday, Wednesday, the 3rd of November 2020, all-share index rose by 0.80% to close at 30,722.25 points. Market capitalization also increased to close at 16 trillion naira. Market gains were influenced by high-performing stocks like Owando and Dangote Cement. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
All right, Ronami Egirani, thank you for the business package. Don't go away. Newspaper review is coming up next.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Achoibi is right here with us. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire.
Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's take a look at the window page of the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate and then straight down to the foot also of the front page. One of the headlines above the nameplate there of the Punch newspaper says, Trump and Biden upbeat as U.S. voters express confidence in process. And Biden claims 5 community votes, results ready today. Most of the results are most likely ready today. Now, federal government seeks fresh $1.2 billion loan from Brazil. Federal government seeks fresh $1.2 billion loan from Brazil. Page 22. Above that, reps stop TCN's 2021 projects. And firm blames higher authorities, page 19. Lead story says federal government clamps down on has-earned SARS promoters, freezes accounts, and CBN places post-no-debit restriction on pharmacist account. Lawyer accuses Nigeria Immigration Service of stopping her trip abroad, and federal government's panel gets 160 petitions, begins sitting today. Then you have below the photographs there, alleged chicken theft, battered suspect, sues IG and others, demands for 150 million naira, page 9. Senate queries that's Lai Mohammed, on 19 million naira travel expenses during lockdown, page 11. Benue mob sets houses and church ablaze over alleged genital disappearance. Lekki toll gate camera stopped working at 8 p.m. That's on the 20th of October, says MD. Details on page 7. 42-year-old man jailed 7 years, fined 1 billion naira for sexually assaulting Kano teenager. And called members to undergo new COVID-19 tests before orientation. That's according to NCDC. Claire.
Yes, Kingsley, thank you. Daily Sun. Daily Sun has at its headline, police gradually return to duty after days of boycott. Comes with 2 riders. IGP boosts officers' morale, redeploys DIG, AIG to new departments, And governors meet over disbanded SARS, looted COVID palliatives and others. And just a little below that nameplate and that headline, strike, hope rises as FG ASU meet today. The details of that on page 7. And there are picture stories of a cross-section of traditional rulers during the emergency meeting in Abuja yesterday. Now, COVID-19, FG threatens to revoke visas, passports of inbound passengers who fail to go for test. It's on page 26. Now, SARS operatives threw me down two-story building, broke my spinal cord, trader tells panel. And then just there also, our camera didn't capture Lekki toll gate shooting, says Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Details of those stories you can find on pages 26, 5, and 8. And just boldly, as you can see on your screens, northern governors under fire over clamor for social media regulation. And there's a rider to that, can and syrup fume. Now, trending at the foot of the paper, troops kill 75 terrorists, lose 3 soldiers in Northeast. Details of that on page 5. And just the last but not the least story on the front page of the Daily Sun, just by the right column, Nigerians set fresh agenda for 9th National Assembly. Nigerians set fresh agenda for 9th National Assembly. List constituency projects, accessibility, representation, others as key areas. Bayo.
Thank you, Claire. Let's start with the good news coming from the possible meeting of the federal government and academic staff union of Nigerian universities today. The hope is that they will probably call off the strike in no distant future. However, yesterday, the Minister of State for Education, Emeka Wajoba, said it is not true that university lecturers have not been paid for 8 months. He said initially, government said no work, no pay. Then came COVID-19 lockdown, and the president directed that everybody has to be paid. Vice chancellors were advised to provide bank verification numbers for eligible ones. All those who provided bank verification numbers had been paid. Of course, those who did not submit BVN couldn't be paid, and the Accountant General Office is about sorted there now. It says the Academic Staff Union have proposed their UTAS. There's no harm in it. If it works and is seen to be better than IPs, it will be adopted. However, in the meantime, let them come on to IPs and let it go on until UTAS becomes effective. Well, the world is watching as the United States election is getting towards result beams now. Polls that began are beginning to close in most states of the Federation of the United States now. Republican Trump won Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, and a few other states. Democratic Biden has won Vermont, Virginia, and this is supposed to translate to electoral votes. Meanwhile, before the polls yesterday, over 101 million had voted. With the polls yesterday, 255 million are the registered voters that are supposed to vote. It is said to be the largest voters turnout in American history. By tally, there are supposed to be 270 electoral votes that each candidate should win to occupy the White House. As at the last monitoring, Biden had registered 237 electoral votes, while Trump has 210. Biden has put up a statement recently, just a few hours ago, that we believe we are on track to win this election. Donald Trump also put up a statement. He said, we are up big, but they are trying to steal the elections. The elections will come to the Electoral College, and the areas that will determine them are Arizona, 11 Electoral College, Pennsylvania, 20, Michigan, 16, and Wisconsin, 10. The total tally of the popular votes will come days after the election because they have to wait and collect all the votes tallied as well as the pre-election votes. Some states have law that the pre-election votes will not be counted until the votes that were polled on the day of election are counted completely. All pundits say the election is very close and has been described as nail-biting. The National Human Rights Commission panel set up to investigate the activities of the disbanded SARS is likely to sit today. It's presided over by former Supreme Court Justice Suleiman Galadima. The panel was inaugurated by the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Already, in the previous panel, the Human Rights Commission had indicted 35 SARS operatives that were supposed to be dismissed, 33 of them for prosecution and 23 for reduction in ranks. With the setting up of the federal panel by the National Human Rights Commission and also the state panel directed by the National Executive Council, all of them have about 6 months of time to complete the assignment. The National Human Rights is supposed to coordinate all the activities and ensure that a report is presented to the federal government. A report about SWAT: 1,220 policemen selected from 13 police state commands have converged at 2 training centers, 420 at Eden Hill in Nasarawa State Police College there, and 800 at Ilaorogun on Osun State. They are expected to have training for 5 weeks. However, if exigency requires, there's a very likelihood they will extend their training.
I'm wondering, I saw the video, trending of the training. I'm wondering the kind of training, I don't know. It looked funny to me. It looked simple. I shouldn't say funny. It looked too simple. Routine training, I want to presume. And then it's also gladdening that police, is now gradually returning to our streets. Duty after days of boycott. And this is maybe because of the, morale booster that the IG, has been undertaking for quite a few days now. Yes, so this is welcoming to us.
Yes, the IG, the Inspector General of Police, was in Lagos to commiserate with Lagos State government and also visit formations of the police that were affected. And the Lagos State governor was very magnanimous. He says that scholarship will be provided for the children of the police officers who were killed in the riots. And secondly, Lagos State is to reconstruct the police stations and posts that were destroyed. And that will go a long way. And the IG has also spoken to the men of the force to boost their morale. But talking about the training, the DIG in charge of the training says it's going to be intelligence-driven.
Yes, I heard that too. I heard that. By Kingsley, in the absence of what to say?
Virtually nothing else to talk about.
So let's bid Bayo goodbye. See you tomorrow, and then we are heading to the US right after this break.
I'm going to do election monitoring.
All right, Bayo Atoyebe, thanks a lot for being around. We'll see you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria with the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. B. Paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. Giving a grant of 30,000 naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic.
Do you know that social media is not good or bad, and that it is you who is using it that is either good or bad. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, verify the information, and reflect before sharing it. Now, are you a good social media user? Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source for a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool!
Wow!
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
It's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. To set the tone for our conversation this morning, which is on the 2020 U.S. presidential election, let's listen into this background by our correspondent, Abdusalam Jibril.
Americans have voted in one of the most divisive presidential polls in decades, with Democratic candidate Joe Biden going up against incumbent Republican President Donald Trump. Also, no fewer than 9 Nigerian Americans are on the ballot. The candidates are bidding for different offices at the federal, state, and local government levels. Nearly 100 million Americans have already cast their ballots in early voting, putting the country on course for its highest turnout in a century. Both candidates spent the final hours of the race rallying in key swing states. National polls give a firm lead to Joe Biden, but it is a closer race in the states that could decide the outcome. To be elected president of the United States, a candidate must win at least 270 votes in what is called the Electoral College. Each U.S. state gets a certain number of votes, partly based on its population, and there are a total of 538 up for grabs. This system explains why it is possible for a candidate to win the most votes nationally, as Hillary Clinton did in 2016, but still lost the election. Control of the Senate is also at stake in these elections, with the Democrats seeking to gain control of both houses of Congress and the White House for the first time since former President Barack Obama's first term in office. COVID-19 played a key role during the election campaign, with the pandemic getting worse in the United States in the final weeks of the election. The U.S. has recorded more cases and more deaths than anywhere else in the world, and fear of infection has contributed to an unprecedented surge in early and postal voting. There are also fears that pockets of post-election violence could break out as the results come in. Landmarks, stores, and restaurants in New York, Washington, D.C., and other cities are boarding up their doors in fears that election-related violence would bring another blow to their businesses, many of which are already reeling from the coronavirus pandemic. The White House has also put up extra security fencing over fears of the election's outcome, which experts say could lead to civil unrest no matter who wins. As the world awaits the winner of the presidential election, experts insist that issues over race tensions, COVID-19, job losses, and the economy will play a key role in determining which candidate will emerge victorious.
All right, US, here we come. This is a trip that you wouldn't have to get a visa or passport. You get all the perspectives. And so, embarking on this voyage with us right here in the studio, let me start with Ambassador Joe Keshi, and he's the former Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you for agreeing to go with us to US. Practically.
Good morning.
All right, and also joining us via Zoom, Professor Bola Akintariwa, former Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Professor Bola, thank you once again for being on our program this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. And just by the way, to indicate that Ambassador Joe Keshi Clare is not just the former Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs. He also served at the Nigerian Consulate in Atlanta in the U.S. That's Georgia, one of the so-called red states. We don't know whether the color is changing now, but the numbers don't quite indicate that. Professor Bola Akintariwa, of course, is also a former special advisor to a Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, we have other guests who are with us via Zoom as well. From Chicago in Illinois, we have George Obarugedo. He's joined us for this conversation. He's a resident of Chicago via Zoom. Thank you very much, George, for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. And then we also have with us via Zoom, this time from the UK, Paul Ejime is an international affairs analyst. Paul, delighted to have you with us on the program.
Thank you, Kingsley, and thank you, Claire.
Okay, Claire, I think we should apologize to George. George is 7 hours behind us now, at least in Chicago. So that's the small hours of the night. George Obarugedo, tell us something. Of course, we are seeing numbers already tumbling out in terms of the results and the tallies for the electoral college votes. But by way of just understanding what 2020 presidential election is in the U.S., just tell us, what is so special about this year's election?
This is the most interesting time of our lives in these United States. It's been a journey. I've been in America now since 1982, and this is the first election we've seen so much division among the people. This is much very interesting, only because it's more in the very, very divisive as far as through the racial divide. But however, it's a learning lesson for everyone here. And I'm quite sure it's going to be a learning lesson for our people back home too, that you can always have election without any major conflict, So it's been a journey, and we are going through it. And of course, only because the incumbent was much more very forward, creating scenarios of fear in everybody. But however, America understands that, and they are ready for it, So we are still waiting for the final results. However, everyone is on the edge. This, as they called it, is a nail-biting election. So it's not over until we get the final countdown. But again, to most of us here, we kind of wonder why they have to call some of these states a little too early, because most of the mail-in votes have not been counted. But once they make the call, typically it puts the doubt on everybody's mind. Okay, that's it for that state. But it's not over yet, though, and we are all still waiting for the final count on every state. But whoever wins is still a win for the country, because again, this is a country of united background of different, culture, religion, and everyone is from different, parts of the world. So, it's an interesting process, and we all have a lot to learn from this particular election,
Here, we're having slight, problem, I should say, with your audio. And I'm told that if you could just be steady, while you're speaking with us, that could solve the problem. But let me ask you, major media houses in the U.S., for instance, this morning are reporting U.S. on edge. Why is that so?
Could you repeat that question? I didn't hear you.
Major media houses in the U.S. and across the world are reporting a U.S. on edge. Why is that particularly so with this election?
I think more so because of the events that has transpired in the recent months all over the country. In case in point, Black Lives Matters, situations. You also have problems with, there are so many other issues from different regions in the country that have posed a very great deal of divide among the people, and a lot of people, they are kind of afraid to tell you how they really feel. And some are very shy about it. But those who are very outspoken and believe in telling the truth will tell you how they really feel. But this election is a true representation of how people really feel in their mind, as to who they have in as a leader of the country. So it is what it is, because this country, if you really look at it, when you are a leader like that, you could say what you want to say, and hopefully, people will buy into your ideology, and that's basically what it is. Because if you're on ground here, you can see the true experiences, how people are really living. But the media or the politicians or the leaders will tell you what they want you to believe. And if you're smart enough, you do your own research and try to know what is right from what is wrong. So those of us who have the ability or the opportunity to travel out, you can see right from wrong. But those who are here, they don't have access or don't have the ability to research or go beyond the borders, they are kind of stuck with what they hear, and it depends on what media you are listening to also. So the variances you see is a reflection of how dividing the message has been from either side. This is the first time I've seen in America where they are saying, oh, the far left or the far right. But typically, by election, you will find more people in the middle. But this time around, it is very, very firm. Very, very far left, very, very far right. And when you have that kind of divide, it's hard to see, and that's what we are dealing with.
All right, George, thank you very much. Just indicating to us the extreme positions of partisans in this year's presidential election in the U.S. Professor Bola Akinteriwa, let's bring you in at this time. Professor Akinteriwa, tell us something from your perspective. Is American democracy on trial as a result of this year's presidential election?
If we are to talk about democracy in the United States, I want to believe that it has to be well qualified. I think what we have in the United States is nothing more than democratization of dictatorship. Absolutely. Democratization of dictatorship from two perspectives. First of all, presidential election in the U.S. Is based on universal suffrage at the first level, in which case people vote not directly for the President of the United States. But they vote for what they call a slate of electors. In other words, the election of the president is at best indirect. So there is democratization at the level where people vote directly for a second level of voters. But it is dictatorial at the second level where we talk about electoral college votes. When the people vote directly for a slate of electors, the electors will now go further to vote either for their parties, or they voluntarily vote according to their hearts. And now, this slate of electors represent, their states. Now, what happens? We need to understand this and explain it. This brings me to the second level of explanation. When, for instance, the slate of electors is established, those elected will pledge that they will vote for Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, on the basis of the results achieved in their state. In their state. So in this case, it doesn't show democracy. It doesn't show legitimacy. Legitimacy is not there at all. So what we are witnessing is simply that we have an electoral college that will now finally determine, disregarding the legitimacy of the people who had already voted. Yes. So I do not see it as a true expression of a democratic will of the people of the United States. My brother in the U.S., I think George Obarogedo made reference to his stay there, and is talking about the new character of the election. I want to agree with him substantially, but with the departing point of difference. You see, what this election is telling us is to tell us the extent of quality of the American people, the extent of their mentality, the extent of their attitudinal disposition. If, for instance, if any normal human being will disregard, for instance, how the foreign policy and relations with the implications for the partners, of the United States, if they can consciously close their eyes not to recognize what Donald Trump has been doing in the past 4 years, only to now say that they will vote in some battleground states or toss-up states or swing states for that president, then that simply means that something is wrong with the thinking of the voter itself. Because you see, you can have the Latinos, you can have the African Americans, you can have all these people. I'm not disputing the fact that United States is a conglomeration of a different strata of society. But the issue is that the moment any set of people will not bother about any wickedness being shown to other people, and you still say you want, for instance, if you say you want Donald Trump, you are voting for Donald Trump, you are simply saying that, yes, you don't care about what happens to the other groups of the society in international life. So in this case, as much as I want to agree, the bottom line, I know even if Joe Biden is elected, the foreign policy of the United States will not change. What will normally change is just the techniques of diplomacy, techniques of relationship with all others. But at this level, let me submit that, look, by the grace of God Almighty, Donald Trump will not win.
Well, that's Prof. That's your own prayer. We don't know what the prayers of the whole American people will be, and that will be seen in a couple of hours when days when the final results, are declared. But of course, you did say one thing that I'm taking away: foreign policy will not change whichever way the results go. What may change is technique in diplomatic relations or technique of diplomacy. Let me quickly introduce one of our guests who's just come in now, Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Deputy Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, and he's currently directing staff, National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS in Kuru, Jos. Ambassador Sarki, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, madam.
All right, just before we bring you in, let's Ambassador Joe Keshe. Here is a democracy, a celebrated democracy, and for over 200 years or so, I don't know the exact years now, U.S. has been conducting elections. Have we seen an improvement on these democratic, principles in this election? Have we seen a sustenance of democracy in this election? What are you reading?
Well, two things have actually played out in the last few months, and again in the last, say, 24 hours. As you rightly said, I think it was the late President Reagan that described America as a shining city on the hill. And that's the America most people got to know. That's the America most people fell in love with. That's the America that people respected. That's the America that felt that, that's a country where the people felt that with America, nothing is impossible. They can do anything they set their mind to doing. But all that changed in 2016. And in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last 1 month of elections, we've seen a complete different America. More because of the character of the leadership of that country today. But as the good Lord would have it, I think Americans have actually lived up to expectation in the sense that, number one, they all came out to vote. Turnout was good. In spite of the voters' intimidation, in spite of the efforts of the Trump team, to do all sorts of things, including getting the Postmaster General to dismantle the process of so that mails would be slow. They did all sorts of things in order to kind of distract people from voting. In fact, as of yesterday morning, there were telephone calls going around a number of cities in the United States telling people you don't need to go and vote. All this took place. But I think at the end of the day, which is very interesting, it's like playing football match and the last minute a team just, hits you hard. Everybody came out to vote. And the results are coming out, reasonably well. Prediction was that it would be a close election. And really, it has turned out to be a very close election. Democrats will be disappointed in some ways because they were expecting that they could flip a number of states, that Hillary lost to, all that has not materialized. But if you follow the whole thing as some of us have did throughout the whole night, there's still some reason to be hopeful. But the point I'm trying to make is that...
Hopeful for who?
If you can say this.
The viewers can't say that.
Hopeful for Joe Biden. Look, the point I want to make is that despite everything that occurred before the election, it has actually turned out far better than we expected. There's been no New York, Washington, Chicago. The stores have been boarded, because people were expecting violence at the end of it all. Everybody was concerned whether the votes would be counted and what exactly some of the, even as of during the voting yesterday, GOP, that's the Republicans, were going to court to stop some ballot papers from being counted. They did all kinds of things, which in this country will simply explain by saying this is rigging. They did all that as well. But at the end of the day, I think they've lived up to reputation as a democratic country. People went out, they freely voted, and their votes are being counted. And it's good a thing that the leaders themselves they've restrained themselves from announcing prematurely any election result. Although Joe Biden has spoken, Trump has tweeted out as usual. And of course, typical of Trump, he again created that impression, again to discredit the election in case he doesn't win. He said they are trying to steal the election. This is not the behavior of a leader. And it's because of him that this election has been extraordinary, that people have been concerned, and the rest of the world really has been troubled, and hoping that the next 4 years of the United States will not be as chaotic, as the last 4 years that we're about to live.
While we're still in the studios here, thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Kesh. So let's bring in Ambassador Usman Sark. A question I asked, on the basis of the 2020 presidential election, is American democracy on trial? If so, why?
Thank you very much for having me on the program. Let me greet my boss, my senior colleague first and foremost, and Madam and you. American democracy is on trial. Well, it's too strong a word to say is on trial, but it's under the spotlight. It is not the impeccable system of governance that everybody believed, and that everybody would look up to and even to copy or replicate in their country. It has revealed some dichotomies, some contradictions. The dialectics of democracy in America today has thrown a very big question mark, against the system in the country. And the world will now start thinking, democracy in the 21st century, what will be the nature of democracy? Is democracy going to be based simply on the system of elections, or some other variables, some other factors will have to come into democracy in order to fortify it, strengthen it, and make it more viable and meaningful in the system of governance? And I think that is what the current situation in America has revealed. The contradictions in America today are between races. American democracy has not coalesced the different races to form one nation. There are several nations in the American nation today, and these nations have been drifting apart for a very long time. Donald Trump came on board simply to exacerbate those contradictions, those dichotomies, and that is why I refer to the dialectics of democracy, to show us that the system in America is just like a boiling pot that you have covered, and the temperature will rise continuously until it reaches an explosion point. And the explosion came on the streets of America with the Black Lives Matter movements and the counter-reaction by all life matters and the white supremacist tendencies that we have seen. So clearly there are cleavages in America that democracy has not resolved. And the American democracy, ab initio, even from the beginning, was not designed to smoothen cleavages and actually remove contradictions in the system. For instance, it did not cater for bridging the gap between the rich and poor. It is a purely mercantile capitalist democracy that has been existing in America for the last 200 years, based on the perpetuation of slavery and capitalist mode of production. And also, it was based on racial exclusivism, one race exercising dominance and superiority over the other. And it has continued for the last 200 years, despite the emancipation, the electoral reforms, and other things. The basic contradiction in the country has remained up till today. So if America is to be the shining city on the hill that His Excellency reminded us, it has to remove or resolve those contradictions. racial contradiction, the contradiction between urban and rural areas, the contradiction between rich and poor. For instance, America is an industrialized country that does not have a national health insurance policy. It does not have a national housing policy. It does not have a national education policy. So these things are left to counties and states to determine. But nationally, President Obama tried to bring some sort of, not a comprehensive health insurance, but a measure of health insurance that will leverage the facilities in the country and make it affordable to people, particularly people on the lower ranks of the society. But Donald Trump came and immediately, one of the first things he did was to dismantle that structure. And that shows you that democracy in America does not promote equity or equality. It promotes the status quo of the capitalist class, the ruling class, the establishment, controlling the country to the detriment of those who do not have. The contradictions in America, as brought out by the COVID-19, clearly demonstrated that the democracy in America did not have the capacity to resolve issues. 30 million people lost their jobs within 4 or 5 months of the beginning of the COVID-19. They went back to actually getting food stamps, and about how many trillion, was released by Congress for palliatives, as we say in Nigeria. Tens of thousands of people were evicted from their homes because they could not pay rent, simply because they could not go to work to get salaries. In America, I think they pay them on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks or so. 2 weeks, thank you, sir. So if you don't pay, the lawyer or the possessors or others will knock on your door with a sheriff, with a gun, evict you, bring your things out, they lock the door, and you are out, whether it's winter or summer, come rain or shine. America today is in crisis. And the crisis in America is that between races, between the poor and the rich. And the democracy has to work to resolve that.
Okay. Just before we bring in Paul Ejime, who also is joining us via Zoom from the UK. Ambassador Seriki, you've enumerated a number of contradictions. Yeah. Are they likely to reflect in the result of the ballot? Do the people see the contradictions, in essence?
Well, there is expectation. For instance, the black people, the African Americans, the Latinos, the American Indians, and others who feel that they are not getting their rights from the system will revert to a corrective measure by trying to vote or trying to bring an alternative president.
You know why I asked that question? Yes. I'm sorry. It's because if the contradictions are manifest, if they are visible, if they are clear for us to see, it shouldn't take the Democrats, tough, this difficulty, to get swing some of the states that Ambassador Jokeshi earlier talked about, the red states.
Well, the role of the media in America, in American politics, is such a powerful inducement or incentive that it beclouds your judgment. If you are an ordinary American, staying in America, watching Fox News and others. American democracy, especially the right wing, the Republican and others, they work on the fear of American citizens, particularly the white people and the so-called average, the middle class and the rich. They provide incentive by saying, we are going to give you tax cuts. We are going to protect your businesses. We are going to give you incentives and so forth. And then they work on your fear by telling you that if so-and-so comes into office, he is going to take away your guns, he will take away your privileges, he will increase your taxes. And so, like Professor Akinteri was pointed out, there is a sort of a mentality or attitudinal problem in America that does not see beyond the immediate horizon. And a state of siege is created in the minds of Americans, whereby their choices are really narrowed down, constricted severely, beyond what they can quickly imagine, and restore either their dignity or the larger interests of the society. So people look at their own interests immediately, not that of the country.
All right, Ambassador Usman Sarki.
If I could just add that to your question, you know, it's really amazing when you see a leadership like Trump, and people are begging those affected to come out and vote. It's really amazing. So just to answer your question, that you would think that particularly a lot of blacks would go all out to vote. But as of late yesterday, the Democratic political leaders were out in the key black cities, begging the people to go and vote. And this is why the election is very close, because those who should be voting, some of them, in spite of the fact that the voting population this year has been high, the fact still remains that there are still a number of people that should have made a difference that did not vote, that did not go and vote.
Well, Hillary Clinton suffered the same thing in 2016, and from time to time, that's what we keep hearing, Ambassador Keshi, with regard to apathy amongst minority voters, particularly African Americans. We'll touch on that subject presently, but let's bring in again Paul Ejime, joining us via Zoom from the UK, is an international affairs analyst. Paul Ejime, let's give us your reading of what's playing out now in terms of the outcome of the presidential election. Some of the results are already known. We don't want to start giving out numbers, but already we understand that each of the two leading candidates has secured over 200 electoral college votes. The magic number needed is 270. But still, there are background issues, the fear, the anxiety, the threats of civil conflict, and all of that. Is American democracy on trial? I ask that question again.
Thank you, Kingsley. And well, let me stand on what the judicial balance of existing protocol recognizing Professor Akin Teriwa, the two ambassadors, Usman and Ambassador Keshi, and then Joe from the US. Well, it's not just in America that democracy is on trial. Even in our backyard, ECOWAS, Africa, and other regions, democracy is on trial. But let's look at the fact that I hope we're not raising our expectations too high, because blessed are those who do not raise their expectations so that their disappointment will be very low. If we do that, we are not reading the dynamics, the local dynamics of the Americans. I heard the Ambassador Casey talking about people now having to beg some people to go and vote. It tells you that there is something there in America that what has the last 4 years of Donald Trump had really exposed the underbelly. Imagine the kind of racial discrimination and injustice and police brutality that had been going on in that society, but had only come out in the last few months. And look at the way it's being treated. There's still some are in denial, others saying it's not systemic, it is one-off, and then you begin to wonder, can this be the same America that is so presented in a form that everybody wants to go to America? I mean, you can now see some people from the management of COVID. I think many people will even be saying, well, let me stay. If I'm dying of hunger in Africa, let me stay there. I don't want to go there where 230 or so people have died from the recklessness of the leadership. Ambassador Keshi also talked about character, the character of the leadership. I think that is democracy, an ideology. But look at those who are implementing, the actors, the operators. I think that is what we have to look at. And that is the reason you have amendments to, America have also tinkered with their own constitution. You have First Amendment, 20th Amendment, and then all that. It is because life is dynamic. You change according to the trend. Nobody knows it all. So you have to make gains, incremental gains, and where you find some fault lines, or some where things are not working, you need to plug the holes. And that is why you now keep on. There is no perfect system. By the way, democracy is not the best system. What they are saying, it is the preferred system, preferred option against all the others. If they weigh it against the dictatorship or authoritarianism or monarchy, I think because it presents you with this option of going to vote and changing your leadership, which others don't. Some monarchy will become permanent, dictatorship will be too harsh and too brutal. So these are the issues. It is not that democracy is the best. It is preferred, and you need to work on it, wherever it is. So we have seen now that it does not matter whether you've been operating it for 200 years or you're operating it for 2 years. By the way, if you look at some African countries, they have a better performance if you were to judge them, put them on a scale of 10 from what America has done. Look at America. You find queues of people going to vote in the 21st century with the nuclear power country. It used to be two superpowers. This is a superpower now behaving or reduced to a third, I don't know whether it's no longer a third world country from the performance and because of the character, because of the leadership. I think that is what we have to look at. Not really about democracy, because democracy, it depends on the operators. Who are the people in charge? I think if a Kingsley is brought there, becomes the president of America, I think things will be different. And then if a Professor Akinteriwa or Ambassador Keshi, I think that is what we have to look at, the operators of democracy. And then what do you do? It's not enough to have you can have the best constitution in the world, but when you begin to operate it, that is when you begin now to see the fault lines and you begin to see the failures. So let us look at not concentrate on whether it's on trial. It has always been and will continue to be, whether in those who claim they have been operating it for donkey years, or those who are just but the point is that now America has shown a very bad example. It has shown it from the fact that the man who has been there for the past 4 years has really put everything on his head. Even the projections of elections, the pundits have failed in 2016, and I hope they don't fail this time, because from all indications, with 433 seats already allocated, Biden having about 220, and then Trump 213, you are left with just 105, and it is nail biting. It's going to the wire. But this is a referendum on a president who said he came to overturn what an Obama presidency has done, and that is where the racial issue comes in. That they didn't think that a black man could come and perform what Obama did. Not that Obama did so much for Africa, or did so. They didn't allow him with the kind of Congress, feature that he had. They didn't allow him to move anything. But this is somebody now came and said, listen, he said it himself. He said he decided to run because of Obama. What does that tell you? It is telling you that this is somebody who is concentrating on certain things. This is a showman. This is a business, by the way, failed businessman, because if he can be owing about $400 million and will not declare his tax, this is a country where, if it was in the third world country, they will be telling you, corruption. What is that? So it is about what do you do? But still, America can still redeem itself. What if Donald Trump, if he wins re-election and decides to go the other side and know now that he has lost, America has lost all the partners in the world, the EU, everybody is on edge. They don't know what is going to happen. Is it in Asia? Is it in Africa?
All right, Paul Ejimet, thank you. We'll just put you on hold. We're trying to rectify the audio quality, and then, of course, once that is done, we'll get back to our engineers actually working on that. We sincerely apologize. But back here in the studio, let me return to Ambassador Joe Keshi. Probably this is the most too close for comfort election in the history of the U.S. And there are talks of even getting a decider, either at the appeal or Supreme Court. I don't know how that it is. Is this more of Trump's promise of, jobs, tax cuts, or his handling of international issues, specifically climate change, the relationship with China, the economic war with China, and, including the nuclear issue, Iran and the North Korea issue?
No, I'm not too sure some of the issues you have enunciated played any significant role in this election. More because Trump did not focus so much on foreign policy to start with. I'm talking of this Iranian and other agents. Look, I think
isn't that why it has given Joe Biden, a chance to,
No, look, Joe Biden, I must say, if he makes it this time, I think he's 4 times lucky or something like that. But here is the issue in response to your question, and what we need to understand is that Trump would have won this election very, very easily if he had handled the coronavirus issue smartly, reasonably well, as a number of other big countries did, or even smaller countries like Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, New Zealand, Germany, But he was careless, he was reckless, and simply refused to, to listen to the scientists on how to deal with the issue. Second point is that, and I think this is what has helped Trump, Trump ensured from day one that he maintains his base, that he plays up to his base. Until the coronavirus thing became serious in the United States, almost every other 2 weeks, Trump was holding one rally or the other, holding to his base. Look, if he win, we still have to wait for the final to see whether he actually expanded his base. And if he doesn't, he certainly will lose. We lose this election. Thirdly, Trump never campaigned on any serious issue that this is what, in fact, many times he was asked, what are your agenda, your policy for the next? He had none. He had nothing to say. So I just think that in answer to your question, that its ability to present alternative facts and to ensure that his people, his constituency remains loyal to him, I think this has significantly helped him in this election. In contrast, Joe Biden also has done reasonably well in trying to inspire people to understand that the last 3 years has not been what he called the soul of America, and that America needs not just to return to normal, but needs to be the America that the rest of the world had come to, to respect. And we just, again, I keep saying, we just have to wait to see which of the two arguments, people would buy. But by and large, the personality of Trump has been the main issue. His character, his integrity, you just name it, everything about it. I mean, here is a man who, another 4 years, and that's the greatest fear of Trump, might just destroy almost all United States institutions. But the good thing is that some of these institutions are very strong, and they are fighting back as best as they could under a very powerful president. But we are hoping that the people have spoken, and at the end of the day, that they will be the final deciders as to who rules the White House in the next 4 years.
All right, Ambassador Keshi, thanks. I want to bring in again Ambassador Usman Sarki. There's no question about it that the key domestic issues that have driven the U.S. presidential election this year have been the coronavirus, the search for economic fairness, part of which you referenced, as well as racial justice. But it is still the case that America remains a world leader.
Yes.
Even though there are other power centers now. Why would who wins the U.S. election matter to global politics?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that is the dimension where Nigerians, Africans, and the rest of the world should care or worry much in the American elections or show interest in American elections. Frankly, their domestic issues are not of much consequence to us, apart from the impact it will have on African Americans, Nigerians and other Africans living there and so forth. Just as they don't think much about us, really, Americans. They don't think much about the rest of the world. So in terms of the impact on the world is, first and foremost, the last 4 years has seen the disruption of multilateralism as a cornerstone of global diplomacy and interaction between and among nations. Donald Trump came and tore into pieces several set constructs in global diplomacy that have maintained relative stability in the international community and also retain consensus on the way the world should move. On climate change, he pulled out of the global climate change structure. He pulled America out of the World Health Organization. He threatened to pull them out of the Human Rights Council, or he did so. And he disrupted the alliances and relationships that have been built over many years with Europe and other NATO members, with the ASEAN countries. He tore the North American, the NAFTA treaty, and renegotiated another one under duress with Canada, Mexico, and also a number of other things. So what should concern us is first and foremost the stability of the global system, global trading system, global security system, and the global humanitarian constructs that have been existing, whereby America contributed more than any other nation towards humanitarian endeavors of the United Nations and other organizations. Donald Trump reduced aid and assistance to Africa by more than 52% of what used to exist. He cut the funding of the USAID, which is the biggest aid agency of the United States Foreign Department of State, by 20% or more. He discontinued the work or assistance of America to the organization UNRWA that supports Palestinians. He brought disruption into American engagement with the world. And most significantly is he withdrew from security structures that have been established, like the joint action, the JPOA, of the five, European powers and America and Russia with Iran. He withdrew from that unilaterally. He withdrew from the START negotiation with the agreement with Russia. And he refused to engage in other processes, to renew other processes, to give confidence to the rest of the world. His policies led to failure with North Korea, with Iran, with regard to containing the spread of nuclear weapons proliferation. So these threats have been exacerbated under him. And the other danger for Africa and for Nigeria is the idea that a big power can behave the way it wants, unrestrained, unfettered by conventions, by international treaties. And that means unilateralism will come in, whereby the perceived policy can be translated into military action against any other country. If he wins big, and the American Congress is controlled by Republicans, for instance, Donald Trump will have no restraining factors in America to actually venture on military adventurism against Iran or any other country that he deems unpleasant. And that will now make the whole world insecure. And for us in Africa, we are trying to build our economies. We are trying to stem the tide of immigration, outside Africa to Europe and other places by building our economies. We are trying to enforce security in our continent. With the disruption of the international system, Africa will increasingly rely on its resources and become more and more alone. Perhaps we will act with the Europeans and the Chinese, but that will limit our space of action. So we need to show interest in what is happening in America in order to emphasize and reinforce the idea of global responsibility of nations and collective responsibility of everybody, and to make nations to refrain from adventurism, whereby because you are powerful, you will do what you want to do above international law.
Okay, Ambassador, just before we take our short break, I'd like you to quickly also respond to this.
Yeah.
You've talked about the threat to global stability,
Yes.
If Trump does return. Is it also deliberate, or was it deliberate? I took time to listen to the debates, during the presidential debates and the vice presidential debates, both camps.
Yes.
And even in the campaigns, nothing was said about Africa. Yeah. Was that a deliberate policy?
Yeah. Well, it's a systemic thing with America. Africa doesn't feature much in America, really, regardless of how you see it. And with their virtual self-sufficiency in oil, and energy, I think they can dispense with Africa. But at the same time, they cannot afford to see China making big inroads in Africa. So they have to now sit down again to say, look, let us stem or stop China from gaining ascendancy in Africa. So we are just pawns in the game. We are not a big factor, really, in American politics. We are just there, virtually a blank, empty continent. They are looking at us from the periscope of their national interests. So when they engage with us, it is on the basis of what sort of relevance can they get from Africans. But we are the last, in consideration. So South Korea alone, in terms of the estimation of American establishment, is more important than the whole of Africa because of the role, geopolitical and security, strategic role South Korea plays in the Southeast Asian structure vis-a-vis China, North Korea, Russia, and other things. So you find that in their geopolitical calculations, we are virtually just there. They will look at us when and if the need arises. So we are not particularly really seriously important to them at the moment.
Ambassador Usman Sarki, thank you very much. On the basis of that realpolitik, it's a bit curious. I'm sure you have all seen the reports of some persons holding a rally in Onitsha in favor of Trump. I saw it, but I wasn't quite sure how to interpret whether they were having a masquerade rehearsal for Christmas or indeed they were actually rallying for incumbent President Trump. All right, that's on a lighter note. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation with all our guests.
Demands of #EndSARS movement. Immediate release of all arrested protesters. Justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensation for their families. Setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days. In line with the new Police Act, psychological evaluation and retraining to be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. Increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting the lives and property of citizens. Federal government's response. On 11th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police dissolved the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, across the 36 states police commands and the Federal Capital Territory. On October 12th, President Muhammadu Buhari addressed the nation, stating, "The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reforms." On 13th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police ordered all defunct SARS personnel to report at Force Headquarters, Abuja, for debriefing as well as psychological and medical examination. On 13th October 2020, the Presidential Panel on the Reform of SARS accepted the 5-point demand of the #EndSARS protesters. On 15th October 2020, the National Economic Council, NEC, directed the immediate establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry across the country to receive and investigate complaints of police brutality, related extrajudicial killings with a view to delivering justice for all victims of the dissolved SARS and other police units. State governors should immediately establish state-based special security and human rights committees to be chaired by governors in their states and to supervise the newly formed police tactical units and all other security agencies located in the state. This will ensure the protection of citizens' human rights. Members will also include representatives of youths and civil society as well as head of police tactical units in each of the states.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad.
Stevita
Hussein Musa. Roduna Joel Tunji. Said Musa John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
Ina sai da plantain na kai kimamin shekara 3.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Najeriya ta ci gaba. Ina sa domin Najeriya ta kyau. And you can see how we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, welcome back at Still Good Morning Nigeria. As we said, this is a very fluid situation with the results tumbling in from the U.S. elections that took place formally yesterday, and the votes are still being counted. As at the last time we checked, we saw that each of the two leading candidates had recorded at least 210 electoral college votes. But we understand, producer is just informing us that incumbent President Donald Trump is declaring that the election is a fraud. The basis for that claim is still unclear to us, but we do know that going forward, we will have the details of why he has made that claim. So once again, just to indicate that each of the two candidates has already scared over 210 electoral college votes. So we return to our guests. I am just wondering if George is back with us in Chicago. All right, George, whenever you return, well, of course, we'll get back to you. Let's bring in one more time Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Professor Bola Akinteriwa, I asked the question already, and I imagine that Ambassador Usman Sarki already dealt with that. We're getting pressed for time, but I would have also asked you why who wins the U.S. election should be important to the tone and dimension of global politics. But there's a new perspective I would like you to also explore. Look, gentlemen, and I mean, I have far more senior professionals here. I've taken an interest in U.S. presidential elections over the past 40 years, particularly since 1980 when Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter. And the interest arose from the hostage crisis in Iran of 1979 and how all of that panned out. And ever since, I mean, one has followed U.S. Presidential elections. One of the key features you always heard was that even before the final declaration of results, once the projections were clear, the loser would usually pick up his telephone and then call the projected winner, and that settled the matter. So that around about this time, we would have known who the winner is and who the loser is. A concession speech would have been given, and an acceptance speech would also have been given. But 2020 is different. And it's also different in another coloration, and I would like you to speak to this. Until round about the 2016 election, hardly was it ever said or heard that there was foreign interference in the U.S. presidential election. But this year, there appears to have been a great deal of anxiety and preparation and development of firewalls against two other major powers in the world, Russia and China. What does this tell us about what is played out with regard to American jitters about the rise of these other powers, Russia and China, and how this might shape global politics, depending again on who wins the presidential election?
Yeah, thank you for your observation and question. You see, when this French professor, Jean-Baptiste Roussel, theorized that tout empire périra, that is, every empire shall perish. Probably he didn't know that the United States was already on the path of decline in terms of power, in terms of leadership of the world. And when Ambassador Sarki talked about global security, which is the desire of the United Nations, the issue is that we have a Donald Trump that does not believe, that does not want what we are talking about as global security. No, he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't want it. That is why he came up with the twin policies of America first and making America great again. What is the implication of that? When you say America first, that means that let all others die for as long as Americans remain first. That's the implication. When you say making America great again, you should ask, when did America condescend
ever become second?
when is it now that you are no longer in the first position and that you now want to be the first again? Now you will discover.
Yeah.
And this brings me to addressing your observation and question. You see, in the past 4 years, America under United States under Donald Trump believes that whether you want to agree with the United States or not, their own position must prevail. This is the issue. And that is how you must understand, for instance, you look at the African Development Bank, a college of sagacious minds came up with a report that Akumi Additional won. But the Americans came up with his own thesis that there is fraud, there is corruption, there is this. All right, when the matter was revisited, what happened? Look at the issue of Okonjo-Iweala. The mere fact that the United States is on the path of decline, now you are now fighting in such a way that the decline will not be total. You will now come back to fabricate unnecessary excuses. No, it doesn't work. So when Jean-Baptiste Roussel said all empires shall perish, there's always a beginning and there's always an end. The time of great power status, the superpower status of the United States is, to me, coming to an end. And now when you look at the countries that are basically challenging the United States, in the main, China and Russia. But Russia is in a special entente with China in such a way that, well, Russia doesn't talk much in the public, but it has not always been criticizing the position of China. So China is preparing itself to enter into the shoes of the United States as successor, as leader of the world. And now, what is happening at the level of Donald Trump is that he's not doing well. He's a businessman at best, not even a successful businessman. I don't know whether it was Gime who reminded us that he was not even paying his tax. When he was asked why he only paid about $700 for tax, he said, well, it was the tax officers that rated that. At the end of the day, you look at the aspect of intervention in U.S. elections, the Russian case, to which Clinton, the Madam Clinton drew attention when she was contesting. Donald Trump was saying, no, Russia did not intervene. But the hard facts on ground have clearly shown that Russia did intervene, did, tamper with the emails, and in this particular, for fear of a repeat, this is why the whole American eyes are, and more significant, you see, this year, 2020, this is the last year, and this election, presidential election, before the redistricting. The districts will now be reorganized on the basis of the new census, all right? And in this case, it attracts a lot of attention and interest. So in this case, I would want to say that this election, in whichever way we want to look at it, there is no way people will not be interfering, if not intervening in the election, simply because the United States, under Donald Trump, is renewing the role of the United States as a global policeman. And that's the meaning of making America great again. It means that Donald Trump, if re-elected, we want to come back now and be intervening. I use the word intervening on a very serious note in the affairs of other countries. And this is what I think cannot be accepted.
All right, Ambassador Bola Akintarewa, thank you. Sorry for the quality of our connection. We'll deal with it. It's one of those days when when the connection is not friendly with us. But back here, Ambassador Joe Keshi, the international system is, I would say, dialectically dynamic. Indeed, some scholars have said there will come a time when we'll probably get to a stage where the global system will become a community of states, Everybody will come together and it will be one big, large community. But from the elections in the US, I don't know, from your perspective, are we seeing a degeneration of multilateralism back to unilateralism and probably to protectionism and all that? What will be at play in the event that Trump gets the ticket?
Why did you say what would happen if Joe Biden wins? That would probably be easier to answer, because we already know what Trump has done, and as he rightly pointed out, Trump has didn't show much interest in multilateralism, except go annually to make some crazy addresses at the UN in the last 3 years. But I think that look, to a large extent, the rest of the world still believe in multilateral activities. And it will be very difficult just for one country. The only reason why we care and why we are concerned is that the country involved is a powerful country. And even more interestingly, that same country helped to build these institutions. And I'm not too sure if Trump is aware of the fact that they helped to construct these institutions immediately after the Second World War. And as issues came on board that the world needed to tackle as one united entity, new institutions are created, like you have the World Trade Organization, you have the WHO, you just name them. But Trump has shown no interest, more because he came with this unnecessary bitterness and feeling against a number of countries that he claimed have taken advantage of the United States. One country in particular that is very bitter against, and no, it's Germany. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One includes his bad relationship with the Deutsche Bank of Germany. The second one is that he just felt that all over the United States, you find Mercedes-Benz, you find Audi and the rest. And he says how many American cars are in Germany. But it's not the fault of the Germans. How many American cars are in this country, for example? You know, so the guarantee we have is 4 more years of Trump. We will still go through the same thing we've gone through in the last couple of 3 years, for example. But a new president, maybe in the person of Joe Biden, has already indicated that come January 22nd, the inauguration is 20th of January. Come January 22nd, he will return to the Paris Agreement, Paris Club. I'm sure he will return to
Paris Agreement. Paris Club.
I mean, the Iran Agreement. I mean, the
Paris Club.
the climate. The climate agreement first. He would definitely go back to World Health Organization, and I'm very confident that he would open up. He would open up some reach to the Iranians to say, look, to say to them, I'm ready to listen to you guys, but you guys must be prepared to listen to others who feel that there's a need to make 1 or 2 changes to the existing agreement. So you see that at the end of the day, we are probably still going to come back to multilateral politics. I do not see it going away. It's almost impossible because at one time or the other, every country needs it for its own sake. Look, suddenly for years he's been complaining about WTO, and the interesting thing is that efforts are now being made to find a credible leadership for WTO. The Americans are stalling. So the point I'm trying to make is that we are not going to do away, whether Trump or anybody, multilateral diplomacy will continue to exist for years to come.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Well, that's George Obaruedo there, back with us from Chicago. Thanks a lot for your patience. Just 2 very quick points that I would like you to also speak to. One of our guests already touched on that. We know, for those who understand American politics, there are vote suppression tactics, intimidation, and all of that. But why does voter apathy continue to linger amongst minority groups, more particularly African Americans, when ultimately the power of change lies in their willingness and readiness to go out and vote? And it would appear that in some so-called battleground states, that voter apathy is not any different from what we had seen in the past. Why is that so?
Yes. That's, great question. I'm glad you alluded to that. The fact of the matter is, believe it or not, we that have access to information outside of this country, we know more about America than the citizens here. Most people that live here, that were born and raised here, for some reason, they are very, very ignorant to what is really happening with their country, their government, their politicians. So, this conversation this morning that we are having, believe it or not, we know more about America than the citizens that we care about. This is why you see that it baffles us. We're looking from the outside. We know more about it. We see the dirt in the whole picture than the people. So this is why you see people are still, it's amazing after what we've seen in the last 4 years with this leader, that he still has this many votes. It baffles you. It's a mystery. But however, it is happening because, again, the people that you expect to go out there and vote have been misled. They've been given some false information to think otherwise. This is the reality on ground. So, and he's done a great job. We're dealing with somebody who is very crafty. Actually, he came on board running the country. You know, he didn't really want to be president, believe it or not, because he just came in. Originally, if you remember, he just wanted to see what is out there. And then they let him in. And once he got there, it's like this is a TV show. This is why he's not really taking it serious. But again, he loves the showmanship. He loves the publicity. He loves being out there, being the person in charge. But the reality is, you have so many people's lives at stake. Like some other of our guests already alluded to. Think about it. The person that holds that office really is controlling a lot of things beyond the United States of America. But he doesn't see it like that. He just believes in building more walls around this country and doing everything to cater to the few people in his club. But the reality is, this is the United States of America that is being looked up to as a leader. Whether you want to look at it from China, Russia, Africa, we are all looking forward to what comes out of the White House. But to him, it's not about that. He just believes you're on your own. So this is where we are having confusion as to, we've been used to expecting certain things from a leading country like the United States.
Okay.
But that's not what we have now. He came on board on a different agenda.
We have to
All right,
return to
Judge.
this
And for some reason now,
we have to return.
Judge, thank you. We have to put you on hold and find it. Just, Ambassador Seriki, last question in 30 seconds, if you may. You earlier said Africa is not a priority for the U.S., and I'm wondering why, because Ambassador Joe Keshi was going to say that. Is it a fault of ours, or is it just, what could be the reason?
Well, the simple answer is we did not make ourselves important. We did not make ourselves indispensable. That is the reason. So if we are going to be important, we need to reassess our priorities, reorder our organizational, concepts of governance and development. And then the rest of the world will now say, hey, these people are serious. They have something to offer. Let us engage with them.
Okay, Ambassador Usman Sarki and gentlemen, we don't have the final results in just yet. But all the points that you have made are all noted. And once excuse me, decision is taken, we'll know whether to return to this particular subject matter, depending, of course, on the outcome of the election. So many more perspectives to explore and what lessons we can also learn, particularly seeking to understand American democracy or American electoral system, what lessons to learn from it in terms of either the good or the bad. Claire.
Yes, indeed. Let's quickly appreciate all our guests here in the studio. Kingsley, please, you got the list. Could you do that for me?
That's right.
Yes.
With us via Skype from Chicago, that's in Illinois, we have George Obaruedo. George, we deeply appreciate you. We apologize one more time for disturbing your sleep. You were not going to sleep anyway because you had to monitor the outcome. We saw you glancing from time to time to the right side, checking out what the numbers are. We love that smile. Do keep safe and best wishes. Paul Ejime, international affairs analyst, also with us via Zoom from the UK. Paul, very small we heard from you today, but next time, of course, you'll have a bigger bite. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program. And from Lagos, we're joined by Professor Bola Akintariwa, one-time Director General of NIA, that's the Institute of International Affairs, also in Lagos, and also a one-time Special Advisor to a Minister of Foreign Affairs. In studio, we had Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Deputy Permanent Rep of Nigeria to United Nations in New York and currently directing staff at NIPS in Kuru, near Jos. Last but not the least, Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and who also served in the Nigerian consulate in Atlanta, Georgia. That's a red state. You've not been able to convert it to blue. You're wearing a blue shirt, Ambassador Joe Keshi.
Here for celebration.
Gentlemen, we don't have time. All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria. today. We do appreciate all of you and those of you who also send in your tweets. Do join us same time again, same station and Steam channel. I am Claire Delabo. Bye-bye.
And that's tomorrow, 7 o'clock in the morning. Kingsley Osalaba.